This is an open letter for Mr. Joe Rogan. Bravo, sir. Beautiful show. Salute. About a week ago or so, you interviewed this gentleman, AJ Gentile. Interesting pseudonym. AJ Gentile, however is pronouncing it but it's very interesting pseudonym. The guy who basically is the host of the Y-Files on YouTube. Very interesting shows. He tells you the truth, but the reality is the last 10-15 minutes of the show, because he works for establishment, it seems the establishment, this is their way of countering the podcast free media, social media or media, personal media all around the world. One way to undermine them is to send your own agents in. So they produce shows, as he said, this gentleman. Apparently CIA has a very well-known established base in California, in Hollywood. See, basically the establishment, let's say the intelligentsia of the establishment of white people in North America has a keen interest in what goes on in Hollywood and has permanent bases in Hollywood in order to discourage or encourage certain directions that these fictitious movie plots take. So you gotta have a hand in that. And in case of I wasn't sure about this AJ Gentile being part of the intelligentsia of the establishment. I wasn't sure. I was half sure because of all his shows. He gave the right information, but at the end it seemed like a group of intelligence officers sitting around a table pitching ideas that how we can poke hole in this fact, that uncomfortable fact. And all the ideas that Mr. AJ Gentile came up in order to debunk the story, the debunking material seemed fake rather than the story. So I was kind of sure he was working for establishment, but I heard on your interview with this gentleman in the first 10 minutes, I believe, I heard something that it made it clear for me that this gentleman is working for the establishment, intelligentsia of the establishment. Don't ask me which organization, because anyway, here's the thing. What I heard that pushed me over the edge of stating that he is working for the establishment. The part when you were talking about advanced technologies, that who you don't want to have these advanced technologies, and it was, of course, we don't want the Russians to have it, and we don't want the China. And actually, you didn't even go for Russia. You went straight for Iran. You said Iran shouldn't. You would think we shouldn't let Iran have this, or others. And I was thinking to myself. Then Joe Rogan, Mr. Joe Rogan, sir, you asked him, so how come, why not Iran? And the guy said, Mr. AJ basically gave the talking point of the establishment verbatim. The talking point of establishment is that, yeah, Iranian people are okay, tolerable, but their government is awful. So therefore, their government shouldn't have it. First of all, a common man in the street is not so verbatim for establishment to state the exact sentence that needs to be said. If Mr. AJ was not an intelligence professional, he would just I don't know. People just say, I don't know, maybe, maybe not. I don't know. I don't know why shouldn't the Iranians have. They tell us they shouldn't have. But no, Mr. AJ made a statement, a clear, pre-memorized statement that no, we can't trust their government. Okay, then the next sentence is, and you know who else you can't trust? The Chinese government. Although the Chinese people are brilliant, just the Iranians, they're brilliant, but you can't trust their government. Then follow the same line of thought. The Russians are brilliant, but you can't trust their government. We should try to prevent their government from gaining access to any technology, any knowledge, nothing. They should live in the fucking Stone Age because, their government. Salute. What Mr. Joe Rogan, what Mr. AJ is saying is basically, if the individual Chinese want to come work for us, the white establishment, the 10% white people who own everything in the West, if the Chinese individual want to come work for us, they're brilliant. But the same brilliant people, if they go work for their own government, which is what is this? What is he trying to say is that if the same Chinese people organize in a form of a government, that is what we have a problem with. With individual Chinese, we don't have a problem with, especially if they work for us. But if they form a competent government, we have a problem with that. Chinese Communist Party. I haven't heard anything about communism from Chinese themselves in a long time. People who are not communist have kept the flag as a souvenir. People who are not communist, are not running their system based on communism, are being accused of being communist. Sort of like, no, they're a capitalist authoritarian state, much like Saudi Arabia. You have a problem with Saudi Arabia? Apparently not. No, the problem is these people, what basically AJ Gentile is saying is what basically the British were saying during World War II when they were recruiting from India and Pakistan and in Nigeria. The British were recruiting all from these countries, these colonies, in order to colonize find new colonies, secure new colonies, use the people from old colonies in order to secure new colonies. I.e., if the Chinese citizen can come and help us in order to defeat China, that's what we are here for. If the same Chinese person wants to go and be part of a competent government in China, which their only problem we have with them is that we want to be the big dick in South China Sea. And if China has a big dick, then our dick might hit each other. And we go to war. Sort of like, why is your dick in South China Sea? That's the question. But then that's never asked. No, we have the right to be in South China Sea. Does China have a right to be in Gulf of Mexico? Should they send a fleet of warships to Gulf of Mexico? Just freedom of navigation or something, and start monitoring SpaceX on the corner of Gulf of Mexico. If the Chinese do that, come to Gulf of Mexico, start monitoring the coast of the United States, you would say that maybe you're not so much for freedom of navigation. You don't want, somebody else, a competent organization on the other side of the planet which calls itself the Chinese government. You don't want that competent organization coming and looking up your ass. The Chinese are the same way. They don't want white-dominated empire of the West going up its drawers in South China Sea, just monitoring. We are monitoring. We are monitoring the coast. Freedom of navigation. You don't have enough to monitor your own coast. Do you have enough to monitor your own coast? I'm sorry, you're running a trillion-dollar budgets, multi-trillion-dollar budgets that you don't have. That the money that you're borrowing from China, you want to use that money to go and monitor China. So, no, Mr. Joe Rogan, this idea that you can't, you can then trust them individually. These non-whites, the Russians, supposedly Russians apparently don't count as white because you wouldn't be killing them. Anyway, these Asians, you can't trust any of their governments, but individually bring them into the British Army and use them however you want to use them. But you understand, the British, at the same time that they were recruiting soldiers from their colonies, they didn't trust those countries to have their own government. And their idea was basically that these people are incompetent. You can't trust them to run their own government. We have to run it for them. That's the same thing that Mr. AJ is stating within the government of Iran, the government of Russia, and the government of China today. And the list is growing. Venezuela, they're not taking orders from us either. So that therefore they must be wrong. They cannot be trusted. Why? Because they want their fair share of their oil revenue. They can't be trusted. Trusted with what? Being plundered? Here's the thing, Mr. Joe Rogan. This is the racist establishment, and unfortunately racist people who are comfortable with this line that the establishment keeps feeding them, that these people from other parts of the planet, they may be brilliant from time to time, and we are okay for them helping us in defeating the Sane, i.e. we are okay with recruiting Nigerian soldiers for our imperial army so we can go defeat India, and then we recruit from India and then to go and defeat Nigeria. This is the point. The point is you can never trust any government that doesn't toe the line with you, because you want to be dominant. You want to keep the white dominance on planet Earth. The establishment wants to keep white dominance. That is, we're talking, when I say white, I don't mean Oklahoma white. I mean London, Paris, and New York. Specifically in, London, New York, and Washington. They don't want to relinquish the white dominance on planet Earth. And apparently they're willing to risk a nuclear war. Because they got their bunkers. Fuck me. This is the thing. But what they don't want to give up is dominance in every continent. Well, folks, you white people, you're domestic to Europe, and you become dominant in North America. Could we just let it go now? You don't need to have to be dominant in Asia and in Russia as well, and Eastern Europe as well. Maybe you don't need that kind of dominance. Maybe you don't need to be dominant everywhere if it means by force. This is the establishment line. You can't trust those governments because, they're loopy. The Communist Party, they're loopy. The mullahs in Iran, they're loopy. The Venezuelans, they're extra loopy. The Chinese were double loopy. Really, Mr. AJ Gentile, loopier then your government officials going to West Asia in Palestine, kissing a wall and bending over for a wall in Palestine. Apparently that wall's supposed to bring them, I don't know, good luck or something. This is, the loopiness is right in front of you, but you pass over this loopiness, this messianic agenda, supposedly. You know, the Mormons also had a messianic agenda to go and eliminate all the Redskins so their God can come, and they eliminated the Redskins 250 years ago, and the God still hasn't shown up. Salute. And the Ashkenazi in Israel, in Palestine, they have been slaughtering the native Arabs for 80 years, supposedly because one of these days the Messiah will come over there, but they just expanded the suburbs and haven't touched that place that supposedly the Messiah has to come. You know, the Mormon Messiah never came, but Redskins are long gone, and the Ashkenazi Messiah will never come even after they eliminate all the Arabs. It's the same story. It's you. If you live, Mr. AJ Gentile, if you live under establishment in which believes in such nutty ideas as the establishment of Israel for the coming of the Messiah, then you don't have the right to point finger at anybody else and say, oh, these people are loopy. You don't have that right. You lost that right. Because you're doing one of the loopiest things ever. You know, just find a place on planet Earth, call it holy for you and not holy for anyone. Who cares about everybody else, and start shooting everybody else in the streets who happen to live near that holy place. Loopier than this, Iranians aren't doing this, the Chinese aren't doing this, the Russians are not supporting Israel. You're supporting a very loopy idea who is doing very loopy things, and you think you have the right to call other governments loopy. Venezuelans are loopy. Venezuelan government, you know, we have Venezuelan. They're brilliant people, but you can't trust their government. But you can only trust their government when their government comes to the White House and gives you things. If they come and give us things and bend over and lubricate, then you can trust them. Outside of that, you can't trust them. If they want to have their own industry, nope, you can't trust them. You have to demolish it, as it was done in Syria, Libya, Lebanon, multiple times. Jordan, Egypt cannot have their own industry because you can't trust their government. How many times did Israel bomb Syrian nuclear facility, Iraqi nuclear facility, and send all of them to the Stone Age? They're hoping to send the Iranians back to the Stone Age as well. This is a loopy idea. You turn civilizations, push civilizations back to Stone Age. They have worked so hard to build a civilization, you send them back to Stone Age because you can't trust their government. Not unless it's run by us. You live under one of the most loopiest form of governance, that would be democracy. Yeah, let's, 350 million people, let's see if we can find the best salesman and put him in charge of the tribe and see how much we can sell. You're living under one of the most loopiest forms of government. You have some loopy, therefore you have some loopy governors governors, not in sense of a small G governor and big G governor. The whole governing establishment that believes in the Loopy idea of there's a wailing wall and it's very special, like the Muslims and their Kaaba. Very special, very special. You find their loopiness as laughable, but your loopiness, no. This is sanity all through. No. In fact, nobody should trust the Uncle Sam's managers, the white establishment in Uncle Sam's land. Nobody should trust them with nuclear weapons because they're the only ones who have used them on a country that didn't have it. You see, they used them on Japan that didn't have it. You use a weapon on an opponent that doesn't have it. It's sort of like you have brought, with nuclear weapons, you brought a gun to a knife fight. Let me repeat that again. Why nuking Japan was the wrong thing to do was because you brought a gun to a knife fight. That's not honorable. If you agree to a knife fight and if the technology is at knife fight, the most you can do, the most that shall be done is that you show them your gun and show your gun what it can do without actually hurting them. That's the only sane solution. If you're in a night fight and you're getting bloody and suddenly you come across a gun, you don't take the gun and shoot the guy because that would be dishonorable. You take the gun and point at the guy and say, okay, stop. Or shoot at the ground if the other guy doesn't know what it is. You shoot it at the ground to show the other guy the power of it. Or you shoot the other guy in the leg. You don't blow up two of their major cities. You disintegrate a small island so that your opponent knows that you have access to a special kind of a weapon and you want the fighting to stop. But that's not what happened with your not Loopy government. The not Loopy government just in the middle of night fight pulled a gun and shot the other guy. Shot the Japanese. That's not honorable. And you accuse the others to be Loopy? Are you serious? Every 4 years you vote for a salesman? True and true salesman. The better salesman always wins. Trump was a better salesman than Mrs. Clinton, and Mr. Clinton was a better salesman than whoever the fuck he defeated. Reagan and Bush and all better salesmen. Your system is Loopy. Don't go for the brain, go for the sales charisma. Salesmanship? In management, charisma should be irrelevant. You need a manager to manage. Issue the right order at the right time. You don't need charisma for that. And to issue the right order at the right time, well, salesman doesn't come to mind when you think of somebody who's well-informed, learned, contemplative thinker. Salesman is not what comes to mind when you're thinking of those, I guess, adjectives. I might be wrong, but it's your grammar, not my grammar. But every time you go for a salesman person with certain kind of qualities, that it's well understood that these qualities are, you know, qualities of good salesmen. Loopy. Others are loopy, who don't choose a salesman as their leader, who, you know, don't nuke other countries, who, you know, don't go kiss a wailing wall and across the planet and be involved in killing a lot of people to hold on to this wall, this special wall. Again, you know, it's a planet Earth is a sphere. There is no special place on a sphere. In fact, the spheres are known, you know, the perfect sphere is an object that basically has no corners, no angles. It's every point on a sphere is exactly like every other point on a sphere in regards to its curvature and angle, and every point on a sphere theoretically should be the perfect sphere. Every point is exactly like every other point. There's no special points on a sphere. On a cube, the corners, you can consider them as the special places, or being on the edge of the angle may be considered as being on a special point of the cube. But on a sphere, it's so good. So, Mr. AJ Gentile, the only reason you repeat the line that they have told you to repeat is to keep the white supremacy. End of story. The line that says, no, we can trust them individually if, you know, they're very smart, they're willing to work for us in order to advance our colonial causes. Fine, and we accept them conditionally, maybe not, but you can't trust their government, i.e., we do not trust them organizing themselves, because then they may want to have some kind of independence. So we don't want that. We don't trust the Russian government, we don't trust the Chinese government. We trust Dubai because we own Dubai. We trust Kuwait because we own Kuwait. Literally. Now we trust Iraq because Iraqis don't have a bank account anymore. Their money goes to New York, and then they get their rations from New York based on their need. Now we trust the Iraqis. When they're right straight under our nuts, we trust the Iraqis. Now we trust the Iraqi government. Now they're not loopy. They're the same people, the same religion, same everything. Now they're not loopy. Oh, their leader was loopy. That's why you couldn't trust the Iraqi government. Your leaders are not loopy that who go across the world to kiss some wall and be allies with a colonial state that is killing, you know, brown natives left and right. You're not the loopy ones. They cannot be trusted with the science because they're loopy. I'm sorry, they were all minding their own business until your agents in Ukraine and your agents in Israel started bombing everybody in the neighborhood, because they felt every neighbor is a threat. The Ukrainians literally, they were advised by the Americans to go and start harassing the Russian population in eastern Ukraine. They were advised to go ahead and encouraged to establish their dominance over the eastern regions of Ukraine by harassing the natives and outlawing their language and outlawing their churches. Salute. So, Mr. Joe Rogan, this is the whole bullshit of we can't trust their government. Any government that doesn't toe the line and doesn't have military bases, Uncle Sam's military bases on their land, is a government that cannot be trusted, theoretically. Some who are actually advancing their cause to be able to defend themselves from threat abroad, like the Chinese, the Russians, and the Iranians, they actually become an enemy. And you can't trust their government with new technology. But they're individually, you know, as the British did, we can recruit Nigerians and Indians into the British army. But at the same time, you know, their governments are loopy. We can't give independence to them because they're loopy. Individuals good, collectively we can't trust them. Because, you know, we can't trust them if we are hoping to keep planet Earth dominated by white people, by white establishment. 10% who are the establishment. Unfortunately, the other 90% of white people buy into this idea of superior race and follow the 10% as upper crust of the establishment to the gates of hell, because they have bought to the idea that white race is special. Therefore, it has the right to go to South China Sea and dictate terms to the Chinese, and go to the Persian Gulf and tell the Persians the Gulf is no longer named after them. This is white dominance of the world. White people trying to continue with their dominance of the world. That's Mr. AJ Gentile's line, that you cannot trust any of those brown motherfuckers organizing themselves into a government. I don't care what they call their government. You can't trust their government because we can't trust them organizing together, because they might undermine our dominance. Well, the last part is not said usually. We just can't trust them. You know, they're loopy. They go kiss a wall in the middle of nowhere. Yeah, I just saw Mrs. Christy Nome in the middle of the shit show going to Israel and kissing the wall, and I'm thinking to myself, how loopy are these people? Yeah, you can't trust loopy people with technology, huh? Salute.